Welcome back, everyone, to the Tojo Dojo, one of the only places where we're talking about what we've been playing and watching here on Pig's Ear in Review this week. I'm Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose. How you been?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Pretty good. There's been all kinds of endless entertainment lately, especially in the movie and TV scene here, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we got the new Haunted Mansion. We got the double feature Barbenheimer, obviously
Yeah.
Barbie and Oppenheimer, which has been taking the world by storm. And then we got a little horror movie that I watched called Talk to Me, which I'll be talking about. So it's been actually pretty crazy how many movies have been coming out over the past couple months. Like the past couple weekends, funny enough, we've been going to the movies, but I've actually have not seen Barbie or Oppenheimer yet. But it's nuts how much there is.
Yeah, and I know you're going to talk about it, but like I've not had a chance to see like Haunted Mansion.
Mhm.
There were a couple of movies I was like, oh, I want to see those, but like not desperate enough to rush out straight away.
Yeah, it's crazy how like so much came out all at once, and then now Hollywood is on strike, and so stuff probably won't
Yeah.
be coming out for a while after like the
Well,
next few
you
months.
know, I got that AMC A-list thing where you can see like 3 movies a week,
Yeah,
and I don't think we've really used it for like the first 3 months of the year.
yeah,
And then now I'm like, what are we seeing this weekend?
yeah. It's been some good stuff as well, which has been nice. But yeah, so I'll just kick it off with Haunted Mansion. So funny enough, I never saw the first Haunted Mansion movie with Eddie Murphy that came out in like
Neither did I.
2007, 2008. Well, so that's what my wife and I did a double feature of our own where
Oh,
we watched the first one. I mean, they're not connected, but the new one's essentially a reboot. But we watched the first one, and then the next day at the theater, or we went to the theaters to go see the new one, so we could have a good comparison of how well they stacked up. I will say, even though this is going to be a review of the new one, I will say the first one I looked up online, and apparently it got like just okay reviews when it came out. But honestly, it wasn't that bad. Like it's an Eddie Murphy movie where he's still cracking stupid jokes and being Eddie Murphy, and like that was of course like the draw for it. But as a movie, it honestly wasn't that bad. I would say if anyone is hesitant, I think it's worth a watch. I mean, I got it from the library, but I think it's on Disney Plus. If I had to take a guess, I haven't checked, but um,
I think the issue with Eddie Murphy was like the people who were reviewing these movies around that time, Doctor Dolittle,
yeah,
Haunted Mansion. He went into like the kids movie genre.
right, hmm
Is people were coming off of watching him in things like Beverly Hills Cop,
sure.
and they probably were a little bit angry that he was doing this.
It was a bit of a departure for sure. And
Yeah,
then I think shortly after a couple of those movies, he sort of like went into hiding. I guess I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, the dude has plenty of money. He doesn't need to keep making movies,
that
but
Shrek money.
oh yeah, clearly get that donkey money. So I would say really quick, just FYI, it's worth a watch. It's not like horrible by any means, but as far as the new one goes, it was really good. I kind
Okay.
of like I am not that I was expecting it to be like a shit show or anything, but I'm like okay. It's a Disney like scary movie. Like, how bad can it be? And it wasn't scary by any means, but it was really well done. It very much leans into the New Orleans lore of like that the Haunted Mansion has. Like the Eddie Murphy one kind of did, but not really. But this one is very much like it's in New Orleans. There's that feel to it with like just the setting of it, and then they lean into that culture a little bit with like some of the witchcraft kind of occult sort of stuff, which was cool. But of course the big draw is that it's based off the Haunted Mansion ride. And I went on Haunted. I mean, the last time I went to Disney World was like 15 years ago, so it's been a little while. But even I remember Haunted Mansion because like that was my favorite ride because it's just iconic and there's so many cool parts to it. And they've like recreated essentially parts from the movie from the ride into the movie. Like the big famous one is like the stretching room in the beginning. Like that's
Hmm.
kind of part of it as well. Just the ride itself, the dancing ghosts, like all that stuff. So like if you've been on the ride, you're gonna recognize like aspects of it essentially, which is really cool. Like it's not like it's kind of weird to think because like Pirates of the Caribbean, of course. Like for people who don't know, it's based off the Disney ride technically as well. But you would think like, okay, how do you base a movie off of a theme park ride? Like, how does that
Well, they
work?
did it with the Jungle Cruise as well, didn't they? A couple of
That's
years
true. I
ago.
didn't see that one, but yeah,
Yeah, it was a very fine 3 out of 5 movie
right.
that like not going to really offend anyone, but also
Sure.
not going to set the world alight. I think the first Pirates of the Caribbean came out of the doors swinging.
Yeah. Hmm.
I still think that first one's a great movie.
Yeah. Very much.
And then I think they just sort of look around the parks now and they're like, well, what else can we do?
All right. What's next? Yeah. I mean, that's a good point too. I don't know if there's any other upcoming properties that they're turning, or sorry,
They
rides that they're
did they did
turning into
that
movies.
Tomorrowland movie
Oh,
as well,
that's
but I never
right.
saw it.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I
I
know
mean,
they're doing a
there's.
Tower of Terror movie.
So well, that one's going to be weird though because that one's technically based off the Twilight Zone already, if I'm
Hmm.
not mistaken. So I don't know. I guess Tower of Terror, I guess, could be its own movie. Who knows? There's
They
endless
did
potential.
some like Disney Channel original movie in the 90s that they actually
Hmm.
filmed at the ride.
I feel like I need to watch that. That seems interesting.
There's some actress who's in it that like Kirsten Dunst or something that went on to become like
Yeah,
really yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as this movie goes, it's a well. I mean, the gist of it is basically this family moves into a mansion, and then they find out it's haunted, as the name suggests. And you have the hook with like the main character is he's this like scientist who lost his wife, and so he kind of went off on a different tangent to like not be a scientist anymore, but he had this invention where he could take honestly almost like Fatal Frame, like he can take pictures of ghosts and like with this
Hmm.
crazy camera he has, and then he gets pulled into this to like, you know, he's a skeptic, so they bring him in, and at first he's not believing it, but then he starts to see evidence, and so he stays there to figure out what's going on. But really the biggest part of this movie, I think, is just the ensemble cast. Like you have Danny DeVito, you have Owen Wilson, Rosario Dawson, the main guy Lakeith Stanfield, who I really like. Just a whole
Isn't
like
Jared
host.
Leto in this?
He is the Hatbox Ghost,
Yeah.
which oddly and okay, I don't know
I found that
why.
weird. I was like, it's a very like likable cast apart from someone.
But see, here's the weirdest part is they cast him, but he's not really in the movie. Like the Hatbox Ghost is like you see like a CGI face, and I'm assuming Jared Leto is doing the voice, but it's like modulated, so you can't even really tell. And there's one scene where you see him as like his human form, where it's a picture, and it's like, okay, that's Jared Leto. Other than that, he's really you don't know he's in it, so it just made me wonder like why did they even cast him at that point? They could
They
have
might have
just
cut him a bit after like Morbius.
that's probably too. I mean, I guess they just wanted to have a bunch of celebrities take part, but like he didn't need to. It didn't need to be cast as some like
Well,
crazy celebrity.
a question I was going to ask, and it might also link back into this,
Yeah.
is my big fear with it is I think I heard they were making a Haunted Mansion movie,
Hmm.
and I think you can make a very good movie based on
Yeah.
that property, right? Like Pirates of the Caribbean, right?
Yeah.
Sort of proof. My fear would be, are they going to try and make 4, 5, 6 movies out of
Right.
this? And my question is, do they kind of set that up? Is that where they're leaning? Is this a good standalone movie? And then if they
Mm.
are, that might be where they're like, oh, Jared Leto's going to be the villain later on or something.
So it's definitely a standalone movie for sure. Like they don't leave it on. I wouldn't say like a major cliffhanger. There is definitely, if they wanted to continue, they certainly could. But there's not anything like, oh, this is Nick Fury comes in at the end and says, oh, here's where we got to go next. Like it's not that kind of
We're going to
ending, which
Big
is
Thunder
good.
Mountain.
Exactly. I will say, so yes, you can definitely, it can be standalone. Will they do more? Who knows? But it's by no means teasing one, which is nice.
Okay.
Another thing I will say, which once again, if you know about some of the Disney parks, I think this will be that much better for you. Is so the main Haunted Mansion is like the New Orleans, like Disney World version. However, there is a part of the movie where they go to this other kind of building to investigate. And at first, when I saw it, I'm like, why does this building look so familiar? It's actually, if I'm not mistaken, another Haunted Mansion from a different park, which I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So thought that was
Okay.
neat.
They're like,
So yeah,
we're going to Shanghai. It's
yeah,
the next one.
exactly. I forget. I don't know if it's the Disneyland one because I can't remember if that one's also New
Disneyland's
Orleans.
the New Orleans one.
Okay, so wait, is the world New Orleans or no?
No, that's in America. Like just America, Liberty Square.
Oh, I thought both America
No,
ones were New
no,
Orleans. My
because there
bad.
is a because for those that don't know, I live here in Florida.
Hmm.
We don't have a New Orleans Square in Florida.
Okay, so that's the land then. Okay, my mistake.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
So that's pretty cool. So then I don't even think it's the Florida one. Then I think it's a different a different international one that's made to look like that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Tokyo.
It might be, honestly. I'll have to look it up. I can't, I saw some like articles saying that it's like based off yet another
Oh,
haunted
I'm
mansion
sure
or
there's YouTube
something.
videos where it's like the 66 Easter eggs you missed,
Right.
and
Oh yeah. Yeah, and
yeah,
there's plenty that I'm sure I missed. But either way though, I mean it's yeah, okay, it's a Disney like kids-ish movie, but I don't know. I had a good time. Like I wasn't
yeah,
expecting much to be honest, and like I think that's just my norm for movies in general now is I just like I'm just going to have a good time. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. There's certain. I don't know if it's we've been worn down or we've got older,
Mhm.
but especially big studio movies now, I
Mhm.
go in with such a we'll see. Like you know
Right.
what I mean? Even like the trailers, like can get me excited now, but it doesn't get me more excited for the movie, if that
Sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
like I enjoy seeing the new Indiana Jones trailer, and then when I'm sitting in the seat, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what this is.
All right. Let's get it over with.
It's kind of sad that you're more excited for the trailer than you are for the actual movie itself these days. It's kind of
Exactly. Exactly. So I think once again the biggest draw other than just being Haunted Mansion is just the awesome cast. Like they all do a great job. They're all funny. They're all interesting. Yeah, I would honestly give it a thumbs up. I wasn't expecting it to be terrible by any means, but like honestly, I had a great time watching it. I think anyone could enjoy it. And it's once again, it's a Disney movie, so it's not like a horror movie like blood and guts fucking flying everywhere.
yeah.
But it's a fun movie. I really
Release
enjoyed
the
it.
director's cut.
Just heads flying off, shit going wrong. I mean, there are a couple. I don't want to say gruesome parts, but like haunted mansion, like kind of creepy things. But once again,
Yeah.
it's not horrible by any
Well, you
means.
got to think this is going to scare a 6-year-old somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
probably.
not
Yeah,
meant to scare a 30-year-old.
yeah, exactly,
You know.
exactly. So, but yeah, I would recommend it. I had a good time, honestly. So,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So thumbs up from you then.
yeah, absolutely. All right, over to you for the movie event of the summer.
Yeah. So Barbenheimer. We're going to start with Barbie here.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think everything that's been said about the whole Barbie and Oppenheimer being a double feature released the same day has
Hmm.
kind of been said and done at this point.
Sure,
I
sure.
have nothing new to add, apart from maybe later on when I get to Oppenheimer.
Okay, okay.
But we'll start with Barbie. I didn't really know what this movie was about. I saw the trailers, and there you saw some of like Barbie in the real world, Barbie in Barbie
Right.
world, and I was like, I didn't really know what I was getting into. It
Mhm.
looked like a fun movie. It looked like
Mhm.
I kind of thought it looked a bit like the old musicals, like in the '60s,
Yeah. Hmm.
because in the trailer you see like Ryan Gosling on like a soundstage dancing,
Hmm.
choreographed and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and
it
I'm
looks kind
like,
of like a
oh,
play almost a little bit.
yeah. I was thinking, oh, you don't see that kind of thing these
Hmm.
days. Like when I saw La La Land, I really enjoyed La La Land just because it was different.
Yeah. Hmm.
And Greta Gerwig is the director, and I think the only thing I'd seen from her before was the Little Women movie she did.
I didn't see that one.
Um, I didn't enjoy that one, but I think that was more because I wasn't familiar with the story.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you've ever seen anything Little Women or read the book or whatever,
I don't think so.
but apparently for that one, she put it all in a different order. It wasn't just a straight
Hmm.
narrative.
Okay.
So, and I didn't know that, but like, apparently I'm the only person in the theater who had never seen anything Little Women before. So when it was showing the ending at the beginning and kept jumping back and forth,
Yeah.
I was confused and thought this was all happening at once.
Did they? Yeah. Did something going on with the projector? Did something fucking
Yeah, but
up?
like for half an hour, I was confused what was
Yeah.
actually happening. But then once I
Sure.
sort of realised they were jumping about a bit, because they
Yeah.
don't tell you, because they
Got it.
assume you know, right?
That's a
And
little weird.
yeah, yeah.
But all right.
So everyone was getting excited about Greta Gerwig directing this, and I was like,
Sure.
no, I can't say
Hmm.
I was thrilled with the last movie I saw of hers.
Yeah.
First thing is set design is
Hmm.
amazing in this movie.
Okay.
None of it looks CG for the most part. It all looks like
Good.
practical effects. I don't know. There might be some behind the scene things where Ryan Gosling's on a soundstage and it's all blue behind him.
Hmm.
But when I was watching that movie, I was like, these sets look brilliant.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
When she's in the Barbie world, it's all plastic. Like she gets under the shower and no
Mm.
water comes out because she's in Barbie land. She's just like
Yeah.
pretending. And
Hmm.
like she opens her fridge and it's just like plastic and like you
Yeah, it
know
seems like, and maybe you'll touch on this, but it really seems like they could have gone the route of making it like any other property, just like face value kind of movie, but it really seems like they leaned into it being kind of like a ridiculous sort of situation.
yes, it is stupid. This movie is stupid
Yeah.
in a good way,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, it's so stupid." And I'm like, no, you're talking to a guy who loves the Naked Gun,
Right.
right?
That is
But
peak stupid.
yeah, they're like, Barbie, you need to go to the real world, and she's like,
Mm.
how do I get there? And they're like, you roller skate to Venice Beach, and she
Good.
just does it. How many movies would be there for 10 minutes explaining all the things Barbie's got to do to become a real person and
Right. Just
transform?
exposition and yeah.
But yeah, it's just like you've got to do this silly thing, and it's going to be funny. And they're like, okay, and she's there,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Or it doesn't explain like. There's a point where they're like, so when you're in Barbie Land, there's like a giant hand holding you and making you do stuff, and she just says, no, that would be silly, and they just move on.
Just don't worry about it.
Yeah, or like they take real humans back to Barbie Land,
Yeah.
and it's a mother and daughter, and they're like, and the daughter's like, should we tell dad? And it just cuts to the dad on the sofa with his phone, and it cuts back to him. She's like, nah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, this movie just looks great. I still need to see it, but everything I've heard from this is great. Yeah.
yeah, and honestly, Ryan Gosling, like, you see all this thing like, it's a movie for women, made by women. The
Yeah.
standout is definitely Ryan Gosling.
Hmm.
Right,
I
he
love Ryan
is.
Gosling. I have always loved him. He has been an amazing actor.
He's great. He's
Yeah.
great, but he's so good in this, and he's such a good comedic actor,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he just plays it up so much, and you can tell he's loving it.
Hmm.
Right, but you can tell he's just like got a little smirk on his
Yeah.
face the entire time, but he just plays it off so well.
I would
And I
love.
legit think he should be up for an Oscar for this.
I would love to see whenever this gets like a home release, like outtakes and like gag reels. I have to imagine it's like like
Yeah,
comedy
yeah.
gold for this movie.
But there was like also as well like Margot Robbie, like she's done some like comedy stuff before.
Mhm.
She's been like
Sure.
in the Suicide Squad. She's the
Yeah.
comic relief and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but she's a very good physical comic.
Sure. Sure.
There's a point where she she just collapses to the floor and falls to the side, but her legs stay straight. She's like a doll, and she's just laying on her side, and both of her legs are just pointing out like a Barbie.
Yeah.
And this movie, you see all these people trying to get angry about it online, but they're not real people with real issues who are really angry.
Yeah.
They're playing
course.
it up, or they've just really not got much going on in their lives.
Clearly.
Like
I don't understand how this movie could offend. Once again, I haven't seen it, but like how it could offend anyone, or like it just seems like anyone would like it. I would think.
I saw two movies came out the same day. One's about a doll, and one is about the building of the nuclear bomb.
Right.
Which one do you think people are more angry about the politics?
I'm gonna guess Barbie, unfortunately.
Yeah. So this is definitely a thumbs up movie.
Mhm.
Even like I know they say it's like it's a movie for women by women. Every guy I know who's seen it has loved it as well.
Yeah.
It's just stupidly funny.
From the first trailer I saw, I was like, this movie looks like it's going to be incredible. I don't know what like made me think that immediately, but I'm like, this has to be a good movie. It just looked ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's all I can really say about it. Is just
Yeah.
go have some fun with it. a big property that doesn't take itself seriously, makes fun of itself, knows all of its issues. Um, even when it's making a point,
Hmm.
they follow it up with a joke.
Yeah.
Now, the issue I have with a lot of movies now is they just tell you how to think,
Right. Right.
right? Whereas movies back in the day, they told you the point, but they weren't telling you what to think. They'd give
Yeah.
you the situation, and in
Hmm.
your own head, you go, "Oh, that's messed up."
Right.
And this movie does it at times, but they like follow it up with a joke here and there.
Sure. Hmm.
Like they give a big speech, but then someone will be like make a little joke that just kills the tension.
Yeah.
But the point is still made.
Yeah. Of course. Of course.
you know. But they're not looking at the camera again like, and you're the problem.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's just shitty writing.
yeah,
But I will say really quick before moving on to Oppenheimer, I'm going to now ask you the question that you asked me a minute ago. I'm assuming there's probably not setting up for a Barbie sequel per se, or maybe there are. But of course, now they've already said, here's all these other board game and doll properties we
yeah,
can start making movies about. And my fear is if it's done with the same level of like humility and willingness to like poke fun, that could be interesting. But if it's just going to be like another, I don't know, what didn't they make like a battleship movie apparently, and I'm sure like that did horrible or something. Like
yeah. It depends on the property you make it. I don't know how you can really make an Uno movie.
like
Like, but then again, like when they said they were making a Lego movie, I was like, "Oh, that sounds stupid," and I loved it. It
fair,
depends on the property, the filmmakers you get behind it, because at the end of the
right,
day, all of these movies that do well based on these just abstract properties are generally got good people behind them.
right, exactly.
And I think that's the important thing. When you're like, oh yeah, we're going to make a movie about the Slinky and starring Polly Shore, then I can tell you how that's going to go.
Right, right, exactly. Okay.
But this doesn't really set up for a sequel in any way. They
Hmm.
could. There's nothing yet again at the end that's like, oh, and then
Right.
these people moved in next door. What's going to
Right.
happen with them? You know?
I need the backstory of Ken.
Yeah. Oh, you get it.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. All right.
Yeah.
It's a full experience then. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm excited to see this movie. Hopefully soon. So
Yeah. Definite thumbs up.
nice, nice.
Um, Now moving on to Oppenheimer, which I
The sequel.
saw. Yeah, I saw it in 70mm as well.
I wanted to see the 70 millimeter IMAX, but nowhere around me has it,
It
unfortunately.
weren't IMAX. It was just 70mm.
Oh, okay, okay, got it.
Yeah. First thing was I was in the lobby area,
Mm-hmm.
and when I went to see Barbie, all the girls are wearing pink,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're like going into the theater. Like 3/4 of the theater I was in for Barbie were wearing pink. And I went in a week later to watch Oppenheimer, and I saw a few people all dressed in pink,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh yeah, we're getting a Barbie showing. Now I went in Oppenheimer, and this girl walked in with her boyfriend,
Mm.
sat down, and she's all in pink, and I'm like, oh, they're doing the double feature today. Or like, he's getting his end of the deal now. Because how
Right,
many
right.
times as well I've heard people be like, I agreed to go watch Barbie, but she has to agree to go watch Oppenheimer.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, Firstly, I want to start with Christopher Nolan though, because I don't think I have loved any of his movies since probably The Dark Knight Rises,
Okay,
and even I know some people are iffy on that one.
fair.
Um,
I certainly at a minimum appreciate his artistry. I can confidently say that, but I would agree that, like, for example, Tenet, I think was garbage. Like, I'm sorry, I
yeah,
thought that movie was
I thought
terrible.
there was a cool idea there.
Right, right,
I thought it was filmed well.
right.
I don't think it was written well or the execution worked.
It was just a mess to me.
It felt
Dunkirk,
rushed.
yeah, exactly. It just,
Yeah.
I just didn't have the best time. It was not great. Dunkirk, I thought was fine.
That I didn't feel like I'd watched a movie. I felt like I'd watched, and I don't mean this as an insult, but I felt like I watched a film project.
I could see that. I could see what you mean.
It felt more like a this is what happened than this is a movie.
Right, right.
if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, I get what you mean. So,
Yeah.
like, and then I mean, I know some people love Inception, and I think that's a fine
I love
movie.
Inception.
It's not my favorite, to be honest, but I certainly like it. I think probably
Interstellar, I wasn't that fussed about. It was
I did
very
like
bland.
I liked Interstellar. It's definitely one of my. It's up there for me, but I honestly feel like probably my favorite. I don't know if it's my favorite. Maybe Prestige or
That's the one I've not seen.
I really like that one, and then the other one. Oh, what the hell is it called? The one where it's like in reverse.
Memento.
Memento. Yeah, I like that one as well. But and anyways, at a
Yeah,
minimum, I can appreciate his artistry. I can say that.
yeah. When the worst movie you've made is Tenant, which people will still comment is filmed well,
Yeah, yeah,
is a nice idea. You're on good
yeah.
footing,
You're
mate.
doing all right.
Yeah. This movie I feel like is in the it's between like Dunkirk and something else. Not in terms
Okay.
of quality, but in how it feels as a movie.
Hmm.
Because this does jump around a lot, which I wasn't a fan of. I think it would have been better if it was just linear. But as we know, Christopher Nolan loves time and messing with it.
Clearly, yeah.
Like his next movie is just going to be a clock.
That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah, but he jumps around a bit,
Mm,
and I think that I don't think that quite works in this movie
hmm.
because I didn't know the story of this guy that well.
Okay.
I've heard bits and pieces, especially the leading up to the movie. You see all these articles,
Sure.
but I couldn't have told you anything about what this guy was
Yeah.
like. And it cuts at the beginning constantly to there's like Congress meetings about him, and he's in a
Hmm.
room being questioned, and you're like, we know what happened with the bomb, but then you're like, so why is he being questioned? Like,
Right.
is he being tried for creating it? Like, like
Hmm.
whatever. So it constantly jumps back and forth. It feels more just like a this is the person, this is the life they led, then this is a great movie. You
Okay.
watch something like Apollo 13, and there's tension there, character building.
Hmm.
I don't think there's a lot of that in this. He
I mean,
doesn't.
I mean, it's created as like a biopic type of movie. I'm assuming, right? But even I guess that's the thing too, because a lot of criticisms with biopic movies are like they dramatize things for the sake of just because it's a movie. But it
Yeah.
sounds like this one maybe not as much. Or
No, I saw something where like his family spoke out and were like, "Oh, this part wasn't true," stuff
yeah.
like that. But this guy didn't seem to make any friends. He just had work acquaintances,
Hmm.
So there was no real. And his relationships in the movie with women, for instance, are very in the background. They're
Hmm.
just kind of there.
Yeah.
So you're watching this guy create the thing, and it's more also as well. It's not like he created it on his own. He was more spearheading the project, and that's not me putting it down.
Hmm.
But what was that Benedict Cumberbatch movie?
The Imitation Game, or
Yes,
hmm.
right. There was a little more of a. They showed him a little more human in
Right.
that movie, right? Whereas this guy's just there while the thing's going on.
Yeah.
I think Cillian Murphy did a really good job as him, but I just don't think as a movie
Hmm.
the person was interesting enough.
Well, it sounds like he focused on the person as opposed to the event of the bomb being created and
Yeah,
going off and the aftermath and all that sort of stuff.
which yet again they show like he was very conflicted about it
Yeah.
and like, is this a ethical thing to do?
Right.
But then they also paint the guy as being somewhat emotionless at times,
Hmm.
which then you're watching a drama movie.
Yeah.
But when there isn't a lot of drama in the main character, it doesn't quite like. I enjoyed this movie. I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again because it's also
Sure.
like over 3 hours long.
Yeah. Another 3 hour. Jesus. Come on.
I was sitting next to a kid who was like 13, 14,
Hmm.
right? And he was there with like his brother and his mum and dad, right?
Mm.
And halfway through the movie, he pulled his phone out and legit Googled how long is Oppenheimer.
That's a great sign.
Yeah. And then like it felt like the movie was over about 2 hours in, And he legit like sat forward, like the I'm getting ready to leave.
Yeah, like, I'm done.
And
Yeah.
he sat like in that position for an hour.
Man, what a trooper.
Yeah. But it like a big thing as well, the music in this. I know I feel like we say this every movie we talk about. Red Letter Media spoke about it.
Yeah.
But the music is too much. It just feels too intense.
Yeah.
When nothing is happening. Whereas a lot of the time, I think like you're in big empty like classrooms and it's two people having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a big bombastic orchestral score.
Yeah.
About just science theories.
Yeah, there's something to be said for just silence and the tension of the moment itself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I just think of other movies. Like, there's times where it works to build tension. You think it's something like Back to the Future, where he's trying to put the cord together and the car's going.
Right.
You want to build tension in that moment. Something tense is happening.
Yeah.
But if you think of a movie like A Few Good Men,
mm-hmm.
when Jack Nicholson starts yelling in the room, right? It's so much more powerful because the room's just silent.
Right.
After he says it, right? Whereas imagine if just in the background you had like AC/DC.
Yeah, and of course there's the other issue as well, which as much as I respect Nolan's like artistry, I will never agree with him on this one of how he keeps making sound and music overshadow dialogue. Like, if you can't fucking hear what people are saying, I get it's an artistic choice, quote unquote, but that's just stupid to me. I do not get that.
The only one I really had issue with was Tenet. There were legit scenes, like there was a bit where they're on a sailing boat and they yell out their plan, and I had no idea what anyone said.
Yeah.
This movie, I think I heard everything that was said.
Okay.
It was loud for the sake of being loud.
Mm-hmm.
When it didn't need to be. Like, don't get me wrong, when the bomb goes off, I get it. Like,
that
you need
sense.
it to, or if he's having like a mental breakdown during a meeting or something and everything's overwhelming him.
Right.
I get it. But yeah, when he's just at a party chatting to someone in a quiet room, which isn't quiet.
Yeah, and then you have like Hans Zimmer 800-piece orchestra blasting.
Yeah. But that's the thing as well, why it's weird the going backwards and forwards to the past and the present. Well, it's all in the past because it's
it's all relative, I guess.
Yeah. It's weird because the music flows from one scene to the other, but you're jumping around so much that you're just like, whoa, wait, what? Like, what's happening? Another thing that I heard before going to see this movie, there was a cameo. I don't think you can describe like Nolan movies as having like cameos. It's not like a Marvel movie, right? But they were like, there was a surprise of an actor at the end.
Okay.
Right. People weren't expecting them to be in this movie, and they were surprised at the person they played.
Okay.
Right. About a week before I saw this movie, you messaged me and said, I was watching a movie the other day, and I thought Richard Kind was doing the narration.
Yes.
And there's me who hadn't seen Oppenheimer yet. I'm like, I wonder if in Oppenheimer then. But I also misread your message and read it as Richard Kahn.
Oh.
As in Home Improvement.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm like, because I think I read it when I was like half asleep or just misread it or whatever. And I hadn't seen Oppenheimer, but heard about there was this like cameo, and I'm thinking, I think they had like Harry Styles in Dunkirk, but Richard Kahn in Oppenheimer? Okay. And I went into the movie expecting it, and it weren't until about halfway through the movie I went, there's not been any narration.
Yeah.
He must have been talking about another movie.
Yes, not Oppenheimer, a different movie. Oh my god,
and also a different actor,
and that too. But what a cameo if that would have happened. If that would have happened, though, can you imagine?
Richard Kahn as Winston Churchill.
Yeah. It should have been Tim Allen actually coming in as well. Why not? Oh, that's great. I love it. I'm glad. Good. Yeah, surprisingly, I've not been spoiled on whoever you're talking about, so I'm curious. I know that like Robert Downey Jr. was in the movie, and
Yeah.
um,
I mean, I've now seen photos of this person like on set and things like that. It's
mhm,
like, do
mhm.
you remember how like Matt Damon's in Interstellar, but they never
Yeah,
really like, yeah,
hmm,
it's sort of like that.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I will give this a thumbs up. I think it's worth watching.
Sure.
I just I was expecting to enjoy it more. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like this is one that you can't really argue with. Like, if Killian Murphy gets nominated for an Oscar or something like that, you're like, yeah, he
Hmm.
did a great job.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it was the most entertaining movie, if that makes sense. Very well made,
Yeah.
enjoyable to watch, but it's just like, this is never a movie I feel like people are going to be like, oh, it's in my top 10 of all time.
Yeah, it's tough because I think we've had this conversation before of like, should rewatchability or replayability of games factor in how you score it? Because like you could enjoy something one time and have it be like the greatest thing ever, but like if you don't want to experience it again, should that affect the score? I don't know if it should or shouldn't. I'm on the fence
Well,
about it,
it's
to
not
be
even
honest.
just the replayability or the rewatchability of it. It's just one of those things where I'm like, you look at it for the most part, you're like, this is very well made. This is very well acted. This
Yeah.
is. There are issues, don't get me wrong, and I've said some of them. But then there's just that part of you that goes like, it was good.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't fantastic.
Sure.
I don't think. I personally, I don't think I'd even put it in my top half of like favorite Nolan movies.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't agree if someone said it was a bad movie.
Yeah,
If that
I
makes
see what you
sense.
mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, once again, I think you can appreciate like his artistry and what he's trying to do, and it's certainly yeah, I see what you mean. Like it's good, but yeah, I don't necessarily have to rewatch it. I'm interested, but I can probably also already know that once I watch it, there's probably not much for me. Like I can rewatch other Nolan movies, but like this one,
Yeah, I think
I'm
like Dark
curious.
Knight, for example, is just so fun that
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
the scenes flow so much that that's one of those that if someone put it on right now, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll watch this.
I'm curious what he's gonna do next. I don't know if he's already announced it or not, but I'm sure it'll be years away. But I don't know. I feel like I would love to see him do a comedy. I don't know why. Just do a comedy movie.
There's little moments here and there of comedy in these movies, like little quips and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like I know it's not his thing per se, but I don't know.
well, I did see an interview with him where they were asking him like, what movies, if they're on TV, do you have to stop and watch?
Yeah,
And he was like, oh, 2001,
yeah.
you know, uh, Diamonds Are Forever, because he's like a big Bond movie fan. And
Mm.
then he was like, Talladega Nights. And they were like, wait, what? They're like, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby? And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're not first, you're last.
At least he has a sense of humor about
Yeah,
that. That's great. I
yeah,
love
yeah.
it. Good for him. I love it.
Yeah.
So, all
All
right,
right,
cool.
though. And
Yeah.
over to you. Talk to me.
Okay. Yes. Oh, I will. So, this movie, I actually didn't even know that much about it. Funny enough, a couple of weekends ago, we were going to go see Barbie or Oppenheimer, and I was like, oh, looking up showtimes at the local theater. And then I saw a poster for this movie, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I had not heard of it. So my wife and I watched a trailer, and the first thing that gave us or one made us want to go see it pretty soon was that it's an A24 movie, and usually A24 movies tend to be pretty well. Like they have their niche of like
Wait,
either.
wait a minute. A horror movie not made by Blumhouse?
I know, right? Can you
Really?
imagine? What a world. Usually A24 movies are pretty solid. Even if they're not horror, they just tend to have really interesting directors and ideas that they fund, either produce or completely do themselves or whatever, or distribute, I should say. And I think in this case, this was just them funding and distributing, but they left creative control to the directors. Interestingly, the directors and creators of this movie are YouTubers, which I found interesting as well. And I've never seen their channel. I forget what the channel name is, but it's these two guys from Australia.
Foodie Pie.
Yeah, it's a PewDiePie movie straight from him. Well, that's the thing too, is like YouTubers have made movies in the past, and I've never really watched any of them, but I've heard they're unanimously garbage. But it's because it's like I think it's their YouTube personality as the movie, which like I think just always does terrible. Apparently, I haven't, like I said, I'm not. I don't plan to watch any of those anytime soon. But these guys, which once again I cannot remember their names, but they have this apparently this YouTube channel where they do almost like movie level like stunts and action scenes, I guess, but like
Okay.
apparently well done. Once again, I haven't watched them, but apparently they've had millions of subscribers or whatever. Either way, they decided to finally make a movie, and I did see an interesting story about how they almost had a big studio buy it from them, but they were going to have to give up all creative control. And they said, F that, we're going to see if A24 can fund us and we'll just make it ourselves. And that's essentially what happened. And I'm glad they did, because this movie is completely unknown actors, or at least to most audiences, because it's completely made in Australia, where these guys, the directors, are from, and writers, directors, whatever. And all the actors, maybe they've been in stuff in Australia. I'm not 100% sure, but they're certainly not known outside of Australia, or at least they will be now, but not prior to this. But I think that made the movie that much more interesting, because you're not being distracted. Like, it's kind of a not low budget, but just indie horror movie, but you don't have like, Matt Damon in it or something like that, like distracting you a little bit. But to summarize what the story is, though, it's probably one of the first movies in a while where it feels like, to some extent, social media is incorporated, not by a boomer who wrote it. Like
Yeah.
the best way I can describe it, because normally it's like, all right, what are the kids doing these days? Let me look on, the TikTok or Instagram and see how they're using their social media. It's like, no, this was made by YouTubers, like I said, who actually can like integrate it into the story. And the gist of the story is, there's this literally like a ceramic hand that kind of looks like cut off right here, that's just like that. And this kid has it where every time you grab it, you start to see like ghosts and spirits around you, essentially, just like in the room
Okay.
or whatever. Like, all you do is like you grab it, and the person has to say, talk to me, and then they start seeing them. But then there's like another step where they can let them into their body, and that's where they essentially get like a high. And so the movie is kind of like one big almost allegory for like teens taking like drugs or alcohol or peer pressure, because they're literally like getting a high, but it's like a horror, weird, like Ouija board kind of situation. And if you let it go too long, that's where bad things start to happen. Like, they basically cut it off at like a minute. And so if you take it away after a minute, like, you're fine. You kind of come down from this high. But then after that, if you leave it too long, like attached, that's where, like I said, bad shit starts happening. And the story is basically about that, and how social media is like perpetuating it to people to do this, to get likes, and like all this stuff is like going viral or whatever. And that's basically the story in a nutshell. But it goes more insane than that, where people who let it, this one particular person like grabs it for too long, they start seeing more and more weird shit happening, and then it starts affecting other people. So it's kind of like this weird, I don't know if virus is the right word, but just it just affects more and more people. So I guess the big draw about this, like I said, is it's this very like indie feel. It's very weird and creepy for a couple of YouTubers who, like I said, they just make YouTube videos. They made some like really gross and horrific like horror scenes. Like, there were a couple times, and I've seen a lot of gross shit with horror movies, especially like Terrifier and stuff like that. There were a couple times where I was like, oh fuck, I had to like like
Yeah.
look away for once or twice, because like there was one scene in particular with this little boy who was essentially like smashing his face into a wall, or not even to a wall, it was like the side of a table, and it just, like, the sounds were disgusting, and it was like, ugh, it was gross. There was, if you like that sort of thing.
Yes, I love
So,
anything.
classic movie, right? So, to be honest, it's a little hard to talk about, because I don't want to give too much away, but it's without question one of the best horror movies I've seen in a long while. Like, for a movie I essentially knew nothing about, and we're like, well, yeah, let's go check it out. It ended up being like, a lot of people are almost comparing it to like another Hereditary, where it's kind of like pushing the genre forward a little bit, essentially.
Yeah, Hereditary. I'm not the biggest horror fan in the
Sure.
world, as you know.
Hmm.
Hereditary, I thought was okay, but I at least appreciated
Hmm.
it wasn't your standard horror schlock, if you want to put
Right.
it that way.
Hmm.
It at least felt like there was a bit of a voice behind the camera.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel like you watch that, and then when they're like, "Oh, the director of Hereditary is now doing this movie," you're like, "Oh well, he's got a different style to everyone else. That'd be interesting, whatever it is."
Yeah, exactly. And there's very much, and don't get me wrong, there's definitely a place for schlock horror because it's fun and stupid or
Yeah,
whatever, but it is nice to see something else. And this is very much like a more serious take and kind of, and like I said, it's interesting because it's about modern like social pressures with teens and stuff like that. So, and they did it well. And once again, it wasn't like an 80-year-old dude in a studio writing like how do teens talk nowadays? Like, no,
they're on
it's
the My Books and the MySpaces and the
exactly.
YouTubes and iTubes.
Basically, yes, exactly. Um, so yeah, like I said, the effects were well done. There's some the main teenager, the girl who's in this movie, who you're focused on. She absolutely killed it, and I would not be surprised if she becomes like a next breakout star because of this movie. Like she can do some comedy bits well, some serious bits, horror, and like I said, none of these people, at least outside of Australia, I don't think I've ever been heard of because this is probably their first movie, and they knocked it out of the park. So if you like that kind of horror, hereditary-ish, kind of more creepy, atmospheric, but with a little more demon occult type of stuff, highly recommended. It's without question one of the best horror movies in a while. And once again, it's just so funny to see that it basically came from a couple of YouTubers, which granted, they've had millions of followers and they've gotten practice over the years with doing kind of this type of stuff. But even just from a story perspective, it was just a unique take on a story. Like even if they nailed all the action stuff, if the story was shit, then who cares? But even the story was just very well done, and nice to see a movie set in Australia. I guess not that it mattered that
Well,
much, but
like even if I don't like this movie or whatever, right?
mm,
Hats off to them for not taking the bag and
yeah,
giving up creative control. Because
yeah,
with all these strikes that are going on at the moment, I actually saw this thing about where someone commented to some writer on Twitter saying like, "Oh well, I don't care if you're all on strike because none of you have good ideas anyway," And they were like, nearly every writer in Hollywood has a great idea that no studio will back.
yeah.
They're
Hmm.
like, if you can get words onto a page, onto a screen, you've
Hmm.
got some level of talent,
Yeah.
right? For the most part, unless like your uncle's in charge of like Oppenheimer or something,
Right, right, right.
like. But
Yeah,
you've got to have some level of talent to get there at least. They're
exactly.
like, but how much that gets changed and condensed and whatnot before it gets onto the screen is another thing entirely. And they said like, if you ask anyone who's wrote a Marvel movie, a Star Wars movie, like any kind of
Hmm.
blockbuster franchise stuff, they probably have like 3 or 4 projects ready to go
Hmm.
that would be unique IP that's never been seen before.
Yep. But
You
it's
know?
risky.
Yes.
So yeah, exactly. And then, like I said, I watched some interview with them, and they flat out said like this could have bankrupted us, like flat out if it went
Yeah.
well. Like they probably had a decent amount of money to rely on because of their YouTube, but like it's still a movie. Like it cost a decent amount of
Yeah.
money, so it was nice to see that. Yeah, so I would definitely. I mean, especially if you're a horror fan, for sure, thumbs up. But even if you're not, and you want something that's not just your typical eighth movie in a franchise, and you're like willing to give it a shot, I would recommend it. But it is surprisingly gruesome at times. So if you don't like that, then maybe don't recommend it as much in that sense. But
Yeah.
it's definitely worth watching for sure. So thumbs up,
Okay.
absolutely.
Sounds like 4
Uh,
thumbs up today.
yeah, I mean, some of the latest movies, man, they've been killing it with all of these. So I'm glad that none of them are superhero movies, thankfully. So they're all different. I mean, some of them are
Yeah.
franchise-ish, I guess, with Barbie and Haunted Mansion, but at least they're fun, unique takes, I guess I'll say. So,
Yeah.
but
All
yeah, so if
right.
you watch any of these movies, let us know what you thought. Did you see a double feature with Barbie and Oppenheimer, or the two Haunted Mansions like I did, back to back, different double feature? Let us know what you think, and yeah, until next time, we'll catch you then. And thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Bye.